Just a quick running order of the slides today and what's going to be involved. So we'll have initial input, just some updates and information, followed by input. Also, we'll be launching our new Improving Digital Practice in CLD framework. That information will be passed today and how the framework works, and that'll link to a little activity how to use the framework that hopefully people will find useful, and subsequently some requests at the end for support and when the next meeting will take place. Just to get the ball rolling, some initial updates. So the Digital Extra Fund, which colleagues might be aware of, is open for applications. It's for grants to £500 to £5,000 and mainly for projects with young people aged 16 and under. One of the key points of this fund is specifically that it runs from July to June next year, and I've taken the liberty of taking some of that text there about what the fund specifically looks for, the idea of supporting and enabling young people to learn digital technology skills out with the kind of education curriculum. So it was to make everyone aware of that specifically in case there's interest in applying for funds. Also to flag up, our colleagues in Education Scotland are looking to carry out some professional learning research. Specifically, we're wanting to see what wider professional learning is needed across the system, not just within digital. And again, one of the forums we'll be sharing with practitioners through this network, and ultimately those that are not attending today, is to that specific forum to allow people to kind of complete their kind of needs when it comes to professional learning, because we know CLD represents a large plethora of different themes and areas. And we'll put these links in the chat as we go along as well. I'm just going to pass you on to my colleague John Galt, who leads on the STEM network in CLD, and he'll tell you a little bit more about that. John?
Thanks, Jamie. Hi, folks. This is a bit of kind of cross advertising here. So if you're here interested in digital matters and CLD, you might also be interested in our STEM and CLD network. And the next meeting of that one's coming up in a couple of weeks' time on the 12th of March. I've put the sign up in the chat as well. That session, we're going to be looking at the Young STEM Leaders Award and get an update on the work round about that. Also a bit more on kind of STEM related funding, but also just opportunities for a bit of kind of network and people sharing information about their own issues at the moment. I know Laura and I were out in Glasgow yesterday and saw some brilliant evidence of some brilliant STEM and CLD projects with bananas being given electrical things and turned into musical instruments. It was quite impressive. Anyway, so that's the STEM and CLD network on the 12th of March. And the next slide there is just a bit of a request from our digital learning team. They're looking for examples of interest and practice between schools and communities around digital projects. So you can see the text up on the screen there. They're looking for ideas across a range of things, whether it's about using digital platforms or using digital skills to boost learning. It could be examples with young people or with families. So Jamie's put together a great wee form for people. It's dead simple to fill in. Just tell us a couple of lines about a piece of practice and your contact details, and we'll follow up with you. So it'd be great to hear from you all if you've got some examples that you'd maybe want to share with the rest of the world. That's me, Jamie, thanks.
Thanks, John. And just to kind of reiterate John's point there, we hope to facilitate space in this network to allow us to share the ideas that are happening across the country when it comes to digital practice within CLD. We know there's some really innovative pieces of work that are being done with learners in different settings, but also at the same time how different practitioners use digital to enhance their work and make it easier. So I would encourage colleagues today to complete one of those forms just to let us know what you're doing, so we can share that, because we all learn from good practice, and that's something that came consistently through when setting up this network, that people wanted to find out what others were doing. Just a couple more little updates, just to highlight the new learning zone that's provided by Youth Link Scotland, part of their digital youth work offering. They've developed a cyber resilience professional learning, and even though it's specifically provided from YouthLink, I am told that it works works regardless of the discipline. So again, if you're a youth worker, adult learning worker, family learning worker, community development worker, the learning is still the same. And it's designed to be done in short, bite-sized chunks, but ultimately it can be done in your own time. It's interactive. It's based on research and information from the National Cyber Security Centre, and it really helps practitioners understand that kind of terminology around cyber resilience, because it's one of these things that can be a little bit more complicated depending on your expertise. So I'd recommend colleagues to have a look at that if you get time, but also to share that with your colleagues within your teams and your wider partnerships. And just a little bit of research to share. The Consumer Digital Index, which is done by Lloyds Bank, is a really good piece of research which highlights the kind of digital and financial lives of people across the country. The report is run regularly every year, and the 2023 report had information around digital skills benchmarking, and there's some interesting statistics in it. Again, it helps formulate where the need is across the country. Unfortunately, there's not a specific section for Scotland or within local authorities. It's a UK-wide piece of research, but ultimately it highlights some key things around about the sort of digital appetite for learners and local people, and some of the kind of motivations and understandings around them. But just some of the kind of quotes that come out of it are quite interesting there, like motivation to develop new digital skills can drop with age, and that's something that we might find is quite a relatable piece of information when it comes to how we engage with learners within the kind of wider communities that we work within. And finally, I just want to highlight some of the resources from Call Scotland, which are an organisation that support practitioners who work in a digital way with learners with accessibility needs. The resources that are available on Call Scotland site are really useful, including upcoming and previous webinars that exist around various digital tools. Various things are useful in different situations. They're short and sharp, and they're really quite useful for any practitioners that are working with learners with accessibility needs. But again, they provide a lot of different opportunities for practitioners to use their leaflets and posters. I've put one up there on the screen just for people to see, but the kind of different apps and iPads, for example, that really work well with learners with dyscalculia or numeracy difficulties. Again, something really visual that can be utilised in a lot of different situations, but ultimately helps the work that you do if you work with anybody with additional support needs. But using those kind of digital tools really work. So that's just a range of updates from the wider system around digital, and hopefully you find them useful. Like I say, these slides will be shared after day, so don't worry about taking all that down, and I put some of the links in the chat. I'm now going to pass to Barry McPhillamy from Universal Connections, who's doing an input today around about how he and his team use digital approaches within community learning development in South Lanarkshire. So he'll talk through some of the things that he does in his practice, but also how this is used to enhance the work he does. So Barry, I'll pass to yourself, if that's all right, and you can take control.
What we've tried to do over the last couple of years since COVID anyway is we've tried to just move on digitally beyond where we were before COVID. So of course, before COVID, a lot of face-to-face work. There was certainly digital elements to our work, but whenever COVID appeared, then that changed drastically, really, because for a period of a couple of years, we're pretty much trying to now deliver digitally, like I'm sure everybody else was. So that's kind of where my involvement came, because for me, whenever COVID appeared, there was a lot of talk and chat around about barriers and the issues we had, and now try to deliver to those that we're working with. And for me, it's just about trying to now move on from there. So that's kind of where I've got involved. In regards to, just jump back to myself, where I work, so I'm based in a community centre, so it's in Whitehill and Hamilton. I'm currently working with a few different groups. I work with some primary groups, personal development. I've got an S2 boys group, challenging behaviour. Senior young carers. I work with Duke of Edinburgh, and also deal with a couple of adult community groups. So that is my kind of current working remit. And alongside that remit, my core remit, which is now my daily working schedule, I'm also involved in trying to deliver various or utilise and engage various digital technologies as part of the building which I work in, one facility, and also across the service that I work for, which includes 10 facilities, but round about 14 different teams. So Jamie, are you okay with the slides there?
Yep, just tell me
So
next
on
slide when you
background.
want it.
Okay, so we can kick on to everything digital. So working with South Lanarkshire, so about 20 years in CLD, and worked with the service I'm working for at the moment till about 2006. I went and worked as a pupil and family support worker for Western Bartonshire Council for about a year and a half. I then came back to this service that I'm working for just now, but then in RBA, then in 2016, it took a bit of a turn. I went for a career change and I went to work for RBS, and it was a bit of a shift. Working for the Royal Bank of Scotland, I didn't work in a branch or behind a counter. I worked for a projects team, and that projects team was a Windows projects team. Not trying to gauge where MD's at, but essentially the Windows operating system. Whenever you turn on a PC, that screen you face is Windows. So I dealt with everything Windows related for RBS, which is thousands and thousands of computers. So during that time, my skills had developed quickly, and that include where that came in as such. It would be including just simple things like just using my calendar, where I had to use my calendar daily to manage my workload. People started putting things into my calendar which I'd never experienced before. We had conference calls between my team on the phone, multi-team across other teams, video calls which come in incredibly handy, unfortunately during COVID, because it's something I'd never experienced before. So video calls between my team and multi-team. Folder trees, just file management systems. Then we've got cloud storage services. And then probably the biggest one, which I'll go into a little bit later on, which included Excel and databases, which is something that we are pretty much using every day in the team I work in and across our service as well. So the time with RBS really kind of it put me in good stead for moving back to the service. But again, unfortunately, during COVID, because moving to digital delivery, I had basically 3 years of prep before that came in. Can we kick into the next slide, Jamie? So social media and its uses. Sorry, just jumping back quickly. See if MD's got anything that they want to say. Please feel free to jump out or shout out. I'm happy to have a chat about things as well, as much as I'm going to take you through some of the stuff that we use within our service. It's good just to have a bit of feedback, or if you want to stick your hand up or put something in the chat. And Jamie, if you could now just shout out if that's all right as well. Mm-hmm. So social media, standard ones for ourselves are Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. That is the standard ones that we use, and we will use them just to promote the work that we do, but also we'll use that to promote work that other services now that we work with deliver also. It's mainly just there for pictures, for some videos. It's there to tell service users when we're open, when we're closed. We'll use Facebook mainly for messaging. So if we're trying to contact a service user, whether that be a young person or an adult, it's generally done via Messenger. And also, as I've got there, that we recognise that social media is age dependent. So TikTok is for younger people, we would find, but Facebook is generally for older, but we do find that that goes across all the age ranges. So there is different age ranges linked to different social media tools. We kind of get that as well. Just moving at the positive and negatives, Jamie. So the positives and the negatives. The positives are the ability to promote the work we do to a large audience, but with no cost attached. So really, across all the accounts we use, we do find that we can promote as we want. Different accounts, so for example, TikTok would be video based, Instagram is picture video based, Twitter is picture based, but it's a lot of language to it as well, although it's short snippets, and then Facebook is a combination. So we do get that. the one big issue, and this will be kind of a common theme through the things that I'm going to talk about, is who manages these sites or these tools, and that is something that in my facility we have not quite got right yet, because nobody really seems to have the time, or don't really seem to want to have the time to be responsible for all of the social media tools. In my mind, I just think of social media as being one big bubble where everything falls within that bubble, and somebody should manage it and they would be in charge of it. But that's not the way it works. I don't have a personal Facebook account. I do use Facebook in the work, but I generally use the Messenger account just to stay in contact with one group that I work with. Twitter I did use previously. I don't use it anymore. We've still got a work account. TikTok I've never used, and Instagram, I only joined Instagram last week, and that was personal use, just for it's a group I train with. They started an account, so I just followed that. And what comes from the lack of management as such for all these sites. So if you've got one person managing the site or all the sites, it's fine. But when it comes to certain people accessing different sites or being responsible for them, then the consistency differs. So what you might find in Facebook, you won't find on Twitter, or if it's posted on Instagram and Facebook, you won't see it in TikTok. And again, that comes down to who's managing it, but it also becomes down to the content that you want to share, because some content is relevant to certain sites as well. Can we just bounce down to the next slide, the Linktree slide, Jamie? So where this comes in, and I just wanted to quickly run over Facebook, etc. there, because I can imagine a lot of people that are here today now, kind of that's standard for them using. So Linktree is a bit different, and that is one link that contains all your social media links, or it contains all links that relate to the service that you're trying to deliver. So see if I can quickly show you, if we can just pull it up. Can everybody see that there okay? Take that as a yes, Jamie, can you see that okay?
I can bring it up for you, like that one there.
Okay. Yeah, Linktree. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so Linktree is just essentially an online repository. Okay, so it's just one place where you can go in, you can add all your links. So as you can see here, we've got Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Wakelet at the bottom, which I'll come on to after this. And as much as I wanted to do, I have done some prep for now delivering today. I didn't want to do too much prep, because I didn't want it to be perfect, and that everything I did was now absolutely spot on. We're always going to face some issues. So I checked the links out last week and they all worked, but there might be a point where they don't work, but that's just now part and parcel. But see if I can bring a couple up just to give an example of something else I want to talk about. Is so we'll go straight into Facebook opening there, and I'll add let's go for Twitter. So our Facebook there. So you can see certain stuff. So I posted this morning, or 19 hours ago, sorry, yesterday. But I just want to scroll back, and I know it's a bit thingy, but the last post on our Facebook was 6 days ago. Okay. And see if I go in and look at Twitter. Same autism friendly before that. It was a day ago. So can you get what I'm talking about? The consistency and the discrepancy. So that's somebody's replied to one of our sister accounts from there, another service. Before that on Twitter, the last post was the February 11th. So we went from 6 days ago to February 11th. So we're already now out of sync there. If I open up Instagram, there we go. So that's by the by. So Instagram won't open. And if I try, I'll give TikTok a go. TikTok, for whatever reason, that can't open either. I think the reason they won't open is not because the link's broke, but I'm currently linked to an RM guest account. So that's an educational Wi-Fi account. And I think TikTok and Instagram won't be allowed to now. We won't be allowed to access them. So I think that's where the issue Whereas if I bring Wakelet up, yeah, that's okay. So hopefully that makes sense. Just come back to managing both sites. So I can access both sites, so I can manage them, but Twitter, I don't really go near anymore. So it's just a case of saying, yeah, that's where an issue is with consistency. So February 11th for that one and Facebook for that one. So I'm hoping that kind of comes in. So really, all you're doing for Linktree is you would create an account, you would go into the account, you would then add the links for certain accounts that you want to use, and it just keeps everything in the one place where somebody can go and access. Again, coming back in that, you can download a Linktree app for your phone. So somebody could go in, download the Linktree app, they could then go in and add certain accounts that they want to follow. But again, everybody's got personalised apps on their phone. So they've got Facebook, or they've got Twitter, they've got Instagram, they've got all their accounts, and really what they're doing is they're following somebody. So if they want to go in and see what somebody's doing or what a service is delivering, they can just go into their own account and do it. For me, I use Linktree because it keeps everything in one location, and I can essentially go in and manage it when I want from this location. But again, as you've seen there, if I go in and type in Facebook at the top, I can go in there and it'll open up for me, or Twitter. So the one place where I would use Linktree is generally my email signature. What I would do is I would have that within my email signature, and then for anybody who has been in touch or I've now been in touch with, they might just see it. So it's just a central location to have all your links stored that you would be using semi-regularly to promote the work that either you're doing or partners are doing, etc. Okay. So we'll kick into the next slide, Jamie, if we can go down to.
I was going to just come in, Barry, just with a couple of the questions, if that's okay, in the chat. You've got one from Billy that says, do you ever use social media for engagement, like polls, etc.?
So we use Google Forms for that, so I can touch on that later. So Billy, we generally use Google Forms quite a lot in our work, so we're using it for all our quality management documentation. So I'm going to come on to that later. So if that's all right, if I can come back to that then, if you just remind me. And
yep, no worries.
Then, yeah, okay.
And then you've got one other question. Does everyone in your team produce and post video content, or do you coordinate it centrally?
So no, there's certain people who are very good at recording evidence as such, so whether it's picture, video, etc., and they will post it. I am not very good at that. So I would look at my role as now trying to manage the sites, which I struggle with also. But then there'll be some people who are very good. So Jerry's out with the Duke of Edinburgh today. Jerry takes some brilliant pictures, brilliant videos. So Jerry will just come onto this now, whatever site, and he will post that himself. So really we've tried to do it centrally, but for various reasons it didn't work. So now everybody has access to all the social media accounts, but it doesn't really work either, because TikTok, I just don't use TikTok and I wouldn't know where to go with it. Twitter, I'm happy, I can use that. I can use Facebook. Instagram, as I said, I've only got my own account, but I use that just to follow an account. I never post on it, although it's only been a week. So Billy, it's probably the idea is, see if you've got somebody in your team willing to take it on. As an example, we've got an adult literacy and numeracy team as part of our service, and I know there's somebody in that team who manages now everything centrally. So if anybody wants anything posted, it would go to that person and then they would post it. But in other centres like ours, we all have access, and we are just encouraged to post regularly just to promote what we're doing. Just quickly going back, so that it was the Autumn Friendly Walking Group. So I generally post stuff like that. So see promotional or informational stuff, I will post the posters, that kind of thing as well. That's generally what I'll post. Or we've got here like a community judo group, so I'll post generally informational stuff, or we post it as such. Okay, to move on?
Yep, that's you. Yep, you can move on from there.
Thank you. Right, so I've got alternative social media, and it's just so Wakelet is something I shout about Wakelet all the time. I prefer Wakelet to general social media. So if we can look at Wakelet and social media as, although it's a different form of social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter are there to post and show stuff that you're doing on a daily or weekly basis. So it is, this group is running, this is who the group's for, or this is what this group did today, here's a picture of them, or the centre's closed today, we're open tomorrow, or the centre, now that kind of idea. Wakelet is different in that, again, it's an online repository. So it's got one location, so let me just go to the public profile. But what this involves is, this stores many different things in the one location. So these are just referred to in Wakelet as collections. So if everybody can see, I'll just make it a bit bigger if everybody can see. So we've got different collections for different things. So if everybody can see there, I've got apprenticeships, I've got fantasy football, health and wellbeing. So I'll go into Whitehill Universal Connections, is the facility I work for. And we have our weekly programme here. You can see it, maybe a wee bit bigger, but although the writing's slightly small. But then we've got a programme from October to December, April to June, etc., etc. So everything is stored, everything's chronological. If we then go, if I can go and find our holiday programmes, so we'll have our Easter programme up soon. The last programme was October, week before that it was summer, etc., etc. Again, going back, we've got various things. So I think health and wellbeing, I posted, oh, that's a mindfulness. I posted the autism picture somewhere earlier on. I put that in one of the, supporting resources it was. So that should be in there as well. So Wakelet, I am a big fan of. Wakelet is just the one place where you can store everything. You can also go back and see now what's been posted. It's chronological. It is what I think is very simple to use, and having everything in the one location. And I try and guide parents, service users, etc. to Wakelet, is because everything is there and so much more. It's not like Facebook, Twitter, etc., where it's kind of a raft of posts and you need to work your way through. Everything just sits there in different sections, and you can work. So again, we've got job fairs, open days. Again, we've got a link down here. We've got all our social media. Just now trying to, that just takes us back to see Linktree. So it's just trying to bring everything together. So for me, Wakelet is, it's just a central location where everything is posted. And that again comes back to certain people I've spoke to who said that they might not use Facebook, they might use Instagram, but they'll turn around and tell us that they've not seen anything on Instagram for now a few weeks, but they've been told by somebody else it's on Facebook or it's on Twitter. Again, you've got to maintain and you've got to manage, and it's generally me who'll do that with Wakelet, but I'm a big fan of Wakelet, and generally if you're a big fan of something, you're happy to maintain it, you're happy to update it, you're happy to add to it. So yeah, Wakelet for me is just a fantastic tool that, again, I like the sections as well. Everything's titled, so if somebody comes into Wakelet and they're looking for something in particular, again, community events, have a look at the last time the community event was posted. So that was December, so with a Christmas party. So everything is just in the one location, which personally I prefer rather than going from maybe social media sites, so Twitter to Facebook, and trolling through posts and just try to figure out what is going on as well. Okay, so hopefully that is making sense. Positive negatives, yep, so we can create manage a large number of collections. Again, going back to Linktree and talking about Wakelet, see if you can move on to QR codes, please, Jamie, if you don't mind. Again, the theme is going to be is that they're not well-known tools, and they're tools that colleagues essentially are hesitant to use. We like to stick to what we know, and that's the same for service users, because if you turn around and you say to a service user, listen, if you go to Wakelet, that's where everything's listed, they don't know about it. They're like, no, listen, is it on Facebook? They just want to stick to what they know, and I totally get that. It's just you're comfortable with what you know as such. So QR codes, I don't know how much use MD's had with QR codes, but we've been using QR codes in our centre to, this will come back to you shortly, Billy, in regards to Google Forms. So certain forms that we use within our quality management documentation, so a participant feedback form as such, we've got QR codes up around our centre, and somebody can scan a QR code and it can take them to a specific site or a link. For anybody that isn't aware, if you can see my screen, that's a QR code there. So what you would do is you would have an app in your phone. You can use your camera, but I've got an app in my phone. It's a QR app. So I would open my phone up, I would hold or scan that barcode there, and that would take me to a certain location. I find them relatively easy to use. They're quite easy to set up. So I think if I'm going to try and give it a go and see if we can try and do one today. So if anybody's out there and they want to give this a go, if you've never tried the QR code, so that's my phone. So I'm going to try and point you at or to the BBC website. Okay, so give me 1 second.
Could I just jump in just for a quick second? So I think the one thing I would say, I think the QR code's fine as long as it's attached to something that appears to be trustworthy, because from a cybersecurity point of view, you should always be aware that asking people to point their phone at something that they're not quite sure where the QR code's taking them. So, we always kind of do that bit about just urgent caution. So I think as long as it's kind of clear kind of where it's taking people to, so that when they get there, they should see, they should know what they're going to see, kind of thing. But I think there is a bit, particularly security-wise, about saying don't just scan QR codes on your phone, because people can use them maliciously to take you to links to malicious pages. So you should always just be a wee bit cautious and make sure that folk know what they're going to see when they arrive or when they scan a QR code. Yeah, listen, I think that's a perfect point. I mean, we've got the QR codes within now our facility. So again, we're in a neighbourhood centre, so it's not a case that you'd walk in the main door of the neighbourhood centre and they would just be based now round about various now parts of the facility. So you need to come into the neighbourhood centre, you then need to come through another door to get into the youth wing, and then all the QR codes are placed together in a certain wall. And they point at a certain site that we use to gather certain information from young people. Again, the point is fair there. The information you're gathering, they should know what the information that is. So for us, it would be two forms. It would be a participant registration form, where we're asking them to now register for certain groups, and the other form would be for a participant feedback form. So we're asking them to tell us what they think about a certain group or some of the service we're delivering. So yeah, it's not. I totally agree. It's not a case of listen, just come in, do as you're told, and now everything will be okay. I don't know if you want to give that a go. If you quickly want to try it, I'll give you a couple of seconds.
Conscious of time, Barry.
Okay, sorry.
That's all right.
That's all right. I'm just I'm trying to be thorough, but maybe over thorough. So that's essentially QR codes. So positive, negatives. Yep. Again, security is an issue. You need an internet data connection now to use them at times. Not everybody has a smartphone, etc. as well. So you're if you're asking somebody to come in and do that, it might now they might not have it, might not be possible. So you then quickly jump back to Billy. So I'm going to miss out OneDrive at the moment, Jamie, just because we're bouncing on a wee bit. So I'll jump to Google Forms. So Google Forms is something that we use to gather all our quality management documentation. And this is something I'm pretty interested in as well. It comes back to my time in RBS, Excel databases, etc. So let's see if we can get it up. So we generally gather all our quality management documentation. And sorry, I don't know who it was that just mentioned the security question there, which is a fair point as well. So generally what would happen is the QR code would point at one of these Google Forms. So we've got it here where participant registration is YFCL2, and then we've got participant feedback form down at the bottom. And I can't show you that, obviously that's personal information, but if I show you a planning document, which now brings out the general idea of the information we gather. So we've got our stuff here.
It might not come up yet, Barry, just because I'm obviously still sharing slides still.
So you're sharing, Jamie, aren't you? So I can't show you. I forgot about that. Sorry. So Google Forms, essentially, it's just an online survey creation tool, but we've adapted it to create various forms that allows us to gather certain information from service users, or we use it to now plan out the work that we're trying to do. That work comes in on Google Forms. It comes in at the back end in pie charts, bar graphs, etc., and give you now various stats, but it also comes out into an Excel spreadsheet. So it's all gathered and it's collated within there. And then with that data, you can then pick through the data to basically analyze the service that you're trying to deliver. So again, it's just another, it's a different tool, but it's a tool for gathering data, essentially, large blocks of data that you can then use to improve your service. I think for me, what I like about Google Forms is I've jumped down to positive negatives, Jamie, is I have one folder now for all my groups. Everything I generally do online, so anything I do online means that there's less storage space regarding physical storage space. That also comes down to anything that's been archived now, so everything can be archived online. Upskilling colleagues is now one of the big things about Google Forms, but we seem to be getting there. People seem to be buying into it. And relating back to what Billy was mentioning earlier on in regards to centrally managing social media, that would then mean who has access or who has permission to certain things. And it's exactly the same for Google Forms. We're gathering a lot of data. So are we just allowing staff members to access the forms so they can complete them, so they can complete now the paperwork they need to do? Or do we give them access to the full site or the full architecture as such, so they can then go in and view the data? And that's something we've kind of went back on as well, because some colleagues were happy just to now be able to access the form and complete it. And then if they needed the data, then I could give them it. But other colleagues wanted access to all the data so that they could go in and view it at any time, which again was a bit of it was just a confidence level kind of thing. How long have we got left, Jamie?
Maybe about 5 minutes.
Okay, all right. So just a couple of things. So AI, I've moved down to AI, Jamie. So AI are just basic language learning models, language learning tools. They just scrape massive amounts of data from the internet. You can then basically ask it anything you want, and it will now provide you a response. I don't want to get into it too much, but essentially for me, I've been using AI to try and help me complete funding forms, and also just to complete various reports that I do. But the one thing I would say in that is that as much as I'm putting something into AI and it's churning out a response for me, you've still got to review what's now been sent back to you. You've got to edit it and you've got to personalise it. There has been cases which I've seen in the news, etc., where people are using AI just to create an essay, for example. They just submit the essay, and basically it's just taking chunks out of various documents, various books, etc. So that's obviously plagiarism. So for me, it's time efficient. In regards to Google Forms as well, the data we're gathering in Google Forms, or some of the data we're gathering, we're also using AI to try and analyse that, which we'll not quite get right yet. I think we're kind of learning. We know AI is changing all the time, but we're also using AI to analyse various bits of data that now we gather as well. The last thing I was going to touch on was Mentimeter. So I don't know if I can pop it up on my screen. You're sharing though, Jamie, aren't you?
Yeah.
That's a bit of a shame, because I was going to say if everybody wanted to try Mentimeter quite quickly. Wait a couple of minutes, Jamie, we can just try and give it a go.
Yep.
All right, okay. So see if I stick in, get back to the chat. See if I stick in the chat. See if everybody can. It's not coming up. Oh, there we are there. So see if everybody can go to menti.com. So I've stuck it in the chat. Okay, we'll give that a go. Okay, I'll give you just a few seconds if we can try and give that a wee shot. All right. And for those of you who are there, you can then type in the following code. Give me 1 wee second. 2767 7522 So see if we can type that code in. And hopefully everybody will see a question just asking for your name, the service you work for, and the sector you work in. And if you do, if you can just enter. Don't know how people are getting on with that. Okay, yeah, and then generally it just brings up some setting now, so we responses. So nice and simple. So we'll just quickly move to the next one. What technology tools you're comfortable using. So it just gives you an idea. So it's just a tool for participation engagement. So we use it now with groups that we work within the centre, that as much as we'll sit down, we'll go through now various activities with them. See if we can have something that we're using, especially with young people, where they can use a phone or they can use a PC or they can use a tablet we've got. It's more engaging, and we just find that they participate a bit more. At the back end of that as well, yeah, Padlet's a good one. Kind of like Wakelet, yeah, Excel Forms. Microsoft Forms, just like just kind of similar to Google Forms, just a different version. And again, I won't go into the next one, but this kind of churns out at the back end. So anything now, any responses you receive, you can then now gather that, and now you can, it's collated for you, and you can use that as you want moving forward, all right? So that's it. I don't know if you want to do the next one, Jamie, quickly, just so the next one just says what aren't people using, just in case it's something they want to now learn more about. I've just fired that up, but so that's really us. Yeah, so everyone, yeah, you get a free account, I think I've said. So I think you've basically got a certain number of presentations that you can create, and within that presentation, you've got a certain number of slides. So beyond that, now it's cost. Oh, and hi everyone, I never realised that was you there, by the way. So there's listen, it's a whirlwind tour. I'm sorry, I can go on about some things no longer than others, and like anybody else, some things interest me more than others. So for me, Google Forms and Wakelet are the big things I'm interested in. Facebook, etc. They're standard now, we use them a lot, but I just think we want to kind of move beyond that. See, to sum it, they've got all our links there. If anybody wants to get in touch, Jamie, get my details. I'm happy to chat to anybody. The kind of thing I would finish on is, listen, I get that there's barriers out there, but I would just say give it a go. You can't really go too far wrong with these things. They're online. See if you do it and it's not working, just give it another go. You'll get there. If you don't know how it's working, get in touch with somebody, get in touch with myself. If I don't know, then I'm sure somebody will. But I think for me, it's just a case of give it a go rather than be disheartened and now just move on to something else. So that's basically us. Thanks for your time. Sorry if I bounced about a bit. And thank you for the opportunity, Jamie.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for doing that input, Barry. I think it's something really useful to see how you've managed to use such a wide variety of tools just to enhance your service. And obviously there's not one tool that fits all things, but ultimately you can see the benefits all these different tools have in regards to making it accessible for learners, to allow your kind of colleagues to input information, or even if they've got particular expertise, like you mentioned about, some are really good at taking photos, some are really good at collating information and doing the posts. I think the main message I would hope a lot of people would take away is that even if you don't have expertise in everything, then you might have a bit of an interest and skills in some things, and it's about giving it a go, really. And that's how you can develop that real strong base. Barry's also been quite happy to share his contact details, so if there's anything you want to ask further questions about, we'll put Barry's email in the chat, and also in the information that goes out after today. But again, just for that further conversation, how he uses that to enhance the service. Has anybody got any specific questions they want to ask Barry before we move on? Just pop them in the chat, or just even put your hand up. I think you got quite a few when we're going through there, Barry, so I think you're fine. But if there's any that pop to your mind, Oh, Billy, you want to come in? Sorry.
Yeah, I guess I was kind of wondering about, like, impact of using different things and then being able to like evidence the impact of using those specific tools as opposed to other ones. So like how demonstrable, I'm never good at saying that word, I'm going to give up, but I feel like you get the gist.
Yeah.
Like that is, and like where we like, because then how we justify where we put our time and efforts, and like what communities are telling us and how we listen to communities and which things are of more benefit to them or not.
Yep, so it's a great question. Jamie mentioned that a few times now, talking about the impact as well, and I've not really touched on that. So the way I would consider it is, to be perfectly honest, I don't really know. I mean, Facebook, you can see now what the reach is, or you can see what the shares are. At the back end, the analytics can tell you now that as well. Twitter, you could go into a certain tweet and now to do the same, how many retweets it's had, how many likes. We don't track that, we don't gather it. Google Forms is slightly different. We go through participant registration, so I think we're about 370 participant registrations for the year. So that would say that we've got now 370 now service users consistently attending our service. If you look at Wakelet, there's no real well Wakelet. I think Wakelet's just a good place to now place a lot of things centrally, so people don't have to now go scouting about. Another example would be as a long time ago, I used to spend a lot of time creating posters for now groups, and see ultimately how much time do people spend looking at that poster. So for me, I'm just trying to move away from spending time putting something somewhere very quickly that I know that somebody might see it. So I think your point's valid, your question's valid, because I don't really know. If you go into the back end of the analytics for Facebook, it'll tell you. Instagram, I've no idea about. TikTok's probably similar. I don't know if anybody uses TikTok here, but I don't know if you like or you share or you retweet things. Instagram, I know you can add things to stories, but how do you actually track it? What impact does it make? I don't really know either. I think the only impact that I would kind of see is now if somebody came in and said they've seen it on Facebook, or now they shared it on Facebook, or they shared it in some way with somebody else. But if somebody shares something, so say somebody took something from Wakelet and they shared it with somebody else, I wouldn't know about that. I mean, it's very hard to, your social media anyway is very hard to track. Google Forms, again, is slightly different because we've got actually people who engage with that. So participant registration, they'll complete that themselves, or participant feedback forms. So you can see the total number of people who have completed them. But again, beyond just total numbers, I don't really know. It's a great question. I don't see the impact, and I don't know how to track it. So I'm happy to be honest about that. I don't know. That's a good question.
Okay.
Have you any thoughts yourself? I mean, have you any like?
Well, I guess like, so my job is community engagement. So I use loads of different digital tools, but for the purpose of like developing community-led services and involving and like amplifying community voice in different ways. That's what my post does. So I guess I was kind of curious about what other people do around that, and like about developing digital tools for that purpose. Obviously, there's like online platforms like Citizen Space and like other kind of folk like that. But I think in terms of the more kind of actually in people's lives stuff, like I'm kind of curious as to how we make sure we continue to be like responsive and on the ball with the things that communities want and like are actively using. Like, yeah, I guess I've got loads of questions about it and I've very few answers, so I could talk about it for too long.
No, and I think, Billy, it's a really good point. It's something that we need to analyse in a richer scale. The idea of how we utilise the impact measurement tools that exist with digital tools and presenting that in such a way that's accessible to the learners, but also accessible to senior leaders and funders, etc. Because it's commonly used platforms for lots of local people, and we want to make sure we capture that information, because you can capture attendees and people that come to groups and projects, but how many that engage with your digital platforms, it's a mixed bag. I'm just very conscious of time, so I'm going to just continue to move on. We're going to have a little bit of time later on for people to sort of have that chance to discuss and share some ideas. But I just wanted to highlight a couple of things as we move on around about the network itself. If you were part of the inaugural meeting back in October, you'll be aware that we came up with our sort of terms of reference and logic model, and looked for feedback in both of them. We also conducted a wider survey of need, which I'm looking to share today, just some of the feedback in that, because this network looks to support them fulfilling that need as much as possible. I think some of the key parts of the terms of reference was these elements here. It was that idea of making sure that learning is accessible, that resources are shared, there's common places for upskilling, support is available, and there's ways to share improvement to practice, but also partners can network with each other and build relationships. But promoting goals to success for digital practice and facilitating professional dialogue. Those terms of reference that are linked with, again, as the presentation gets shared later, if you want to find out more about the full terms of reference, that's the kind of key part. And our logic model about how we do that and with the result we produce is these kind of things here. And these are the things we hope to develop as the digital network evolves. So that kind of common network online area for information and resources to be accessed on, contributing to national developments, case studies, good highlighting partners and partnership working, but also looking for resources and practitioners, what they kind of use, evidence gathering, just like we talked about there, impact and research and knowledge, but things around policy as well, support, training, upskilling, mapping. So all this is the way in which that will be done through that kind of logic model. So both those documents have been ratified now. And again, it's a good reference point if you're looking for the purpose of this network. But like I said before, we did do a survey towards the end of last year and the start of this year, and we found out some fundamental things. We got 110 responses to that survey, and it focused on themes of CLD as a whole, where digital elements are needed, or the support for digital elements are needed. So when we asked questions, we focused them on that particular theme. So we had a theme around planning, and we gave examples of what that might look like the idea of like using digital technology to share calendars and word processing tools, creating newsletters, minutes of meetings, etc. Based on the feedback, that was something a lot of practitioners said they didn't feel the need. So that's something, again, you might find that yourselves, that is something that's not necessary from your old skill set. When we moved on to other things, though, such as recording and reporting data digitally, like using survey tools, gathering data, analysing data, digital planning, that was a much stronger message. So we as a network here would hope to facilitate learning around that in a more effective way. And it kind of echoes some of the discussions earlier there about how do we make sure we're consulting well and gathering that information and analysing that information and demonstrating impact as a result. We asked questions around collaboration, so like joint working, sharing of information, presentations, video calls, collaboration spaces, etc. And again, that was something that was maybe a bit more split, not as strong as the previous ones, but there is some need there and confidence level for the practitioners. So the sort of the range of support we provide is in Education Scotland and our partners to support that, but look to manage it in such a way that it's useful for those that need that. And then when it came to other elements such as delivery, engagement and empowerment, so using digital tools to consult, participation and gathering feedback, supporting learners to navigate safely and securely, that was something, again, that was seen as a great need. And we touched upon that briefly earlier about kind of the idea of internet safety and cyber resilience, something the sector feel that they need more support on. And finally, our last question was that idea of accreditation and evaluation versus digital means. And again, that was quite a strong one that practitioners felt they need more support on. The idea of capturing evidence for awards, having digital portfolios, completing assessments, evaluation data, capturing that digitally. So we feel like these are the kind of main things that we would look to support through this network over the remainder of the year and provide learning or direct practitioners to learning in such a way that would allow them to have upskill themselves, but also feel more confident in utilising approaches around these elements. I know that's a bit small there, but some of the kind of key areas that were mentioned. So there was elements around like digital skills and learning, multimedia, content creation, online delivery and technology use, data management and analysis, online safety, digital awareness, emerging technologies and AI. And obviously there was concerns around about discrepancy in training that's available to practitioners and also resources that are available to CLD colleagues compared to maybe like formal education and wider local authority. So you can see based on some of the views there that there is an abundance of things the sector wish for and need, and that's something hopefully we'll be looking to acknowledge within the network and the learning it provides. We also asked questions around what specific software people are interested in finding more about. Again, some have touched upon things here, but like things like Google Forms, using like different sort of multimedia platforms, using things that are video editing tools, using streaming platforms, things like Canva and Photoshop. These kind of tools as well are something that practitioners feel they would like to get more knowledge around. Again, spreadsheets, databases, things that can enhance the work that people do. And these are all kind of messages we will take on board. And finally, these are kind of that summarised in a kind of top 5, I would say. So familiarity in software tools, and then those specific ones as part 2 there. Skills and knowledge around about databases, spreadsheets, etc. AI seems to be one that comes up a lot, and it's funny because what you're looking at right now was summarised by AI, so all the information within the surveys was summarised into those 5 points there. So it's just again a way that demonstrates how AI can be used, and I know that that's something ourselves and our partner organisations will look to facilitate, and how to use AI in a way that's useful and not just a kind of conversation tool. And then miscellaneous different IT platforms and things like that. And any other comments that came from the survey were just like some of these elements here. So navigating online spaces, advocates for increasing community learning through digital means, different challenges in different software, online safety and how to present that to learners and use it for practitioners, different type of monitoring via evaluation tools. So you can see a lot of commonality in some of the messages that are coming through. And again, when we share these slides, you can have a look at them yourself, and this might be some interesting information that comes to elements you discuss with your colleagues in your different sort of settings. And what this has led into now, and I'm happy to announce a sort of launch of our sort of online framework, which is called Improving Digital Practice within Community Learning Development. This framework has been developed by a range of different practitioners across the country, and the reason behind it was to simply make sure we have a tool that can be used to support all practitioners, all teams, all organisations, all leaders to work in tandem with their colleagues to enhance digital practice. So we're looking to share that today, and obviously share it out in wider networks, and we'd encourage you to share it with your teams as well. Just to give you a quick synopsis before we do a little bit of looking into the tool, it's essentially an improvement framework, and it looks where digital can be utilised effectively within the characteristics of CLD. And what we mean by that is not specifically a framework for a part of CLD, so it's not specifically for adult learning or youth work or others, it's for all of CLD, and that's the kind of beauty of the framework, that it's been split into different elements that are kind of common around CLD and all its aspects, and essentially because it's been co-designed with stakeholders in with it across the country, it ensures that it's relevant in how it's used. But I mean, the main element there is about how it enhances practice, improves outcomes for learners, and practice for practitioners. So how does it work in that sort of way? Well, it splits CLD into these themes, and I think you'll probably feel that you can identify the work that you do, the work that your colleagues that you do in each one of these themes. So we'll all do delivery, we'll all have elements of accreditation, we'll all have elements of capacity building or engagement. And And what it does is it looks at these themes and demonstrates and discusses how they can be done in a digital context. So saying we all know how this looks in day-to-day life and the work that we do, but how do you make sure that it's more digital in that approach? And it gives sort of a guidance on how to do that. To pick one of these as an example, if we look at engagement, the main sort of heading there, if you look at it as consultation with learners, it's conducted by practitioners using a range of digital mechanisms. And then to make it simpler, there's examples of how that might look. And when this was developed, this framework, it was not to say that you need to do all these things. It was to give examples of how it might look to help people. Because sometimes when you look at a statement like that, like the one on the left there, it can be quite confusing or overwhelming or too vague. So we want to include statements to give that guidance in a specific way. So if you look at things specifically, like learners are fully involved in consultations with digital tools and platforms being used consistently where appropriate. So again, if you were using digital consultations to gather learner voice, that would be seen as really emerging practice in a digital way. And if you're not, then it might be something you would want to improve within your practice. And if we move on, what we also provide as part of this framework is a self-evaluation template. So again, it's encouraged that teams, organisations, practitioners use the template to look at each of these themes in a digital context and think about what they're doing now and essentially how well they're doing it and what can be improved upon. So it allows that sort of discussion to take place, and if there is improvements to be made, that's where that journey begins. So the tool is very practical. It's not overloaded with lots of information and not too convoluted. It's designed to work very hands-on with practitioners, but ultimately it's something that colleagues will find quite useful. And because it's been co-designed by CLD practitioners across the country, it is that idea that it will be kind of relevant to all different situations. So if you think about an example, what that might look, you might have an adult learning team that want to gather what they're doing about what practitioners are doing to support accreditation using digital means. They might say, well, after sharing different approaches, how they're utilising the team, they look at different ways that they're doing that, what's working well and what's maybe how well it's working. And then finally, they might say, well, as a team, we're going to look at the gaps that exist within the service that's delivered and make plans to address those gaps. So if you look at the accreditation theme, the digital element of it is there as accreditation and guidance is provided through digital means, and how that might look are those two examples. There's more examples as well, but just to pick out two of them, practitioners can use digital platforms to access the learner's work and give feedback on progress. So that would be how that would look in a digitally specific way. So to give everybody a chance to kind of utilise that, we're going to do a short activity. And I'm going to ask if Laura to sort of start to divvy people into sort of breakout rooms, just small rooms that allow people to have a little discussion, look at the information and potentially see if it's something they can see using within their own role and provide a little bit of feedback. I've put together a Miro board here that can help with those discussions, but again, you don't need to use it. The main thing is if you just have discussions about the document and the resource itself, which I've linked previously. But we'll do this for about kind of 15 minutes, and then when we come back, we'll take some feedback, what people think about the resource, but also if they can see the relevancy within their sort of settings. So Laura, are we okay to deploy people, if that's fine? So hopefully you got something out of that. I'm just curious if anybody's wanting to give a wee bit of feedback or questions, because obviously this is a national tool that's been developed and it's designed to aid discussions and aid that sort of idea of how to enhance practice with digital. So just to see if anybody's got any points they'd like to highlight or any questions they'd like to ask at this point, just if you want to put your hand up or jump in. If you look at the chat as well, you can put things in the chat. No worries, Richard, that's fine. Again, the idea is that it's to be used, so hopefully in your own sort of roles, you can use it within your own teams. I'd be quite keen to see if there's particular teams that would pilot using it and give a bit of feedback of how it's went down. That'd be really, really useful, even if you can just reach out to myself and just let me know how that sort of went. But it's that sort of guidance document. We've not got lots of improvement guidance documents for CLD. We've got one for improving gender balance in CLD, and this is one around about digital. And they're designed to sort of help teams and practitioners improve their sort of practice. So we've only got a couple of minutes left. Just a final wee thing to sort of share and a wee request. So as part of the sort of terms of reference and the logic model, part of the digital network, we're hoping to develop an online space that can be used for resources, information, all that kind of stuff. And I'm looking to see if there's practitioners that would be interested in supporting the creation of that. So if it's something you would be interested in doing and working alongside myself and colleagues, just a little form to fill in. Again, I'll put this in an email out to everybody and send it out as a full thing, just to see if you're keen to be involved in developing an online repository, an online platform, online portal, whatever you like to call it. And the second thing, just as a sort of last caveat, is when it comes to the next network meeting, it'll probably be around about June time. So if you've ever done a straw poll before, it's dead simple. It'll only take you about 10 seconds. There's a couple of dates there that are suggested. If you pick your top 2 choices and just give me an idea of when you'd like that digital network meeting to be, it'll probably be around about the middle of June. But there's a couple of days there that work with various calendar and diary spaces. So if you could complete that, that'd be really useful. Just before we finish, if there's any other points or anything anybody'd like to kind of jump in, just say or put your hand up. It's absolutely fine. But hopefully, you found today's input from Barry at Universal Connections really useful. Hopefully some of the information you found at the start will help you, be it the funding or consultations, etc. John's obviously put a really good point in there about the independent review of CLD, which closes for responses on the 3rd of March, so this Sunday. So please, if you've not already done that or not shared it, please do, because that's a national independent review of CLD and it obviously affects us all. But yeah, and hopefully you found the toolkit today, the framework, useful, and you can give me sort of some feedback, and if you're planning to use it, then even get in touch with myself. But finally, just thanks for coming today. Thanks, Barry, for your input, and hopefully you got something out of it, and it's great to see you all, and hopefully you have a lovely weekend when it comes.